So if we're a tech team and maybe 4 stakeholders depend on us, I think if both sides are doing OKRs, that's a good way to see where the IT bottlenecks are and kind of, resolve those ahead of time.
Your team uses OKRs for quarterly goals. So why do you use them and what are the pros and cons for you?
I'm a big fan of OKRs. I think it's a really good way to get different teams aligned. Some of our biggest stakeholders are just starting to use OKRs right now, and I think that's where it gets, that's where like the magic starts to happen. That's where you get kind of the conversations on more of a numerical basis, a more quantitative basis. And I think that's where like the trade-offs become clear to both sides. Where you kind of, so if we're a tech team and maybe 4 stakeholders depend on us, I think if both sides are doing OKRs, that's a good way to see where the IT bottlenecks are and kind of, resolve those ahead of time. That said, there's a lot of kind of, you can also do that with a well-planned roadmap. And I think one thing we struggle with right now is finding meaningful numbers to work against. Because I think especially in the supply chain area, so a good example is one of our main KPIs is how many times does the customer contact support. And that's a number that has, I would say, probably like hundreds of factors moving it, right? So this is kind of our main, this would be like the main metric we're trying to move with our OKRs, but it's basically impossible to isolate for any meaningful work. So finding something that applies to us specifically is something I think we're better now than when, so now we're in we just started Q4, I started the end of Q1. I think we've been doing OKRs for like a year total now. And I think we're just starting to get to the point where these numbers, these KPIs we're working against are more meaningful. We have like really good buy-in from the team on the OKRs as well. I think they're a part of day-to-day work. Product managers feel empowered to say, okay, stakeholder, really good idea, but that's not part of our OKRs right now. That's not what we're trying to achieve this quarter. So I think the important message is it takes several quarters to establish something like that. It's hard to find meaningful metrics, but I think we're on a good path and it makes sense for us.
And when you set the OKRs, are you going for ambitious goals or are you going for realistic goals? What works at Wayfair?
This is one of the hardest parts, right?
Yeah.
This whole because classical, invented by Google, and the idea was, okay, success is you achieve 70% of your goal. That's kind of a nuanced thing to communicate to stakeholders who are kind of, if they achieve 70% of something, they get their feet to the fire, right? So I think that's kind of a cultural gulf between the way product and IT tick and the way business people tick. And I think that's something we've talked about. Is that part of the whole system that we can maybe put aside for now while we're kind of establishing this?